Hi there, it's Polly here. Haha, with my old pal Mr. Snoots in winter mode, which means tea. So, weird backstory. I always had a huge interest in the Western Desert War theatre in World War II. This was because I never got to meet my grandfather, who was one of the Australians fighting over there. Indeed, he was an anti-tank gunner. Didn't make it out of Tobruk, but this little game, one I bought on a whim, this is a solo miniatures game. Now, I really like solo wargaming. It's a difficult thing to do because you have to keep yourself guessing. How do you fool yourself? How do you challenge yourself when you're running both sides? There's some innovative ideas coming out. This game is called DAK Attack. That's Deutsch Afrika Korps. This is a game about doing raids on Germans and Italians in the Western Desert when you are part of the Long Range Reconnaissance Group. Long Range Desert Group was the group LRDG. You might remember some terrible old TV shows like, what was it, Desert Rats or whatever, but effectively what happened during that campaign was Wingate, a loony, who had many ideas, some of which were completely insane. But amongst those was his idea of raider forces. And so they wanted Australians to do it, but after the whole Breaker Moran incident, Australian troops may never ever be under the control of any officers other than their own. That's all the way up. Australian units never join corps or divisions of other troops. So Australia said, if we run it, sure, you can have Australians. They said, no, it'll be a British unit. So Australia said, go fuck yourself. So wackily enough, they decided colonial sorts. Wait, New Zealanders are like Australians. Yeah, we'll draw that largely from New Zealanders and Canadians. So they took people from New Zealand, if you remember the Lord of the Rings films, that's what New Zealand looks like, and Canadians and so forth, and British, and decided to unleash them in the the sandy wastes of the Libyan deserts. Yes, of course, they'll do so well there. No, they did brilliantly. What these groups would do is they would set forth on heavily armed trucks and they would be given a mission. And those missions were to go through areas of like the Qatar Depression and so on that were considered to be completely impenetrable to troops, get into far into the back lines of occupied territory and blow shit up. They were particularly used for attacking and destroying airfields. They absolutely monstered the Luftwaffe, but also supply dumps. But also they did attacks on command structure. They would attack German generals and command staff, capture them off and seize them. In theory, a big chunk of their work was also a road watching, where they would put groups down and they would quietly observe German rear lines in areas where the Germans thought there was no danger, and they would get reports how many trucks carrying what are going in what directions, going where are German tank transporters transporting their assets. These guys were incredibly vital, and they're completely separate to the SAS. The SAS is a separate thing entirely. They were renowned for using kind of interesting scrappy equipment. Jeeps were gold. They were essentially they're from America, and then this is really sparking off before much American equipment is available. Jeeps are very hard to come by. So they're often using trucks, sometimes even captured trucks and so forth. And in theory, it's supposed to be a truck that's got at least a machine gun on it and will be carrying the things that they need. Obviously masses of water, obviously masses of repair parts, metal channels to put under the wheels so if you have to make a causeway to get them out when they're bogged, these sorts of things. But because they were under constant air attack and so on, these trucks began to be piled with weapons. Machine guns, 50 cal machine guns, most famously 40mm Bofors and so on the back of trucks, captured Italian 20mm Braiders. Because these guys were on the high teeth, they would often use a lot of captured material and nail them on. Sometimes they found that, well, we're going to use Italian trucks because they've been lying around and, well, We can get those, but there's not that many Bedfords running around. With explosives and crews and equipment, these units go far into the deserts, perform their mission, and then have to make their way back against the odds. And that's what this game is about. It's a miniatures game. You can use whatever damn full scale miniatures that you've got on. Obviously, like having a ton of plastic Matchbox or Airfix vehicles are fine. But if you've got, God help us, 28mm stuff from left over from doing bolt action or whatever, you can use them. It's not too figure heavy. This is a skirmish game, but a patrol is going to be maybe half a dozen of these long-range desert group vehicles. So you're going to need some cool kind of trucks as models with guns, bombs, and sticks covered with nails. Crew, inevitably, they would wear Arab headdresses, the berets from whatever unit they'd come from, or, old slouch hats, or what have you. They wore whatever they damn well pleased. And you're going to need defending units, which are going to be Germans and Italians, maybe some armoured cars, maybe some motorcycles, maybe some cool wagons, staff cars, going to be kind of a useful thing, and things like, you might need maybe, if you're getting fancy, you might need a Waco, which is a British liaison aircraft. You might need maybe, a Stuka or a Messerschmitt or a Fäuserstoch, just for the fun of it. Terrain, you're going to need sandy tables, you're going to need some cool kind of deserty looking vehicles, maybe some bits of road, maybe some barrels and so on for supplies. How this game works is it's sort of done in two main parts. It comes as this booklet, and it comes as these different card decks, the mission decks. There are two different types of mission decks. Now, you have your first part of the game, which is the mission you were actually sent to do. And that is going to be something like attack an airfield, attack a command asset, attack a supply depot. There is a little chart where this is rolled on. And for this, where do we go? Yeah, you've got these lovely little cards that you've got. These are mission cards that are used for generating some extra bits and pieces. So, your initial mission is a solo game that you play. There are guidelines in here for laying out the different sorts of assets that you're going to be attacking. This is what a German supply depot is going to look like. This is what a German airfield is going to look like. And you play a game. Defending forces are set out and randomized. And what you do is you come on and you assault them. You're playing a skirmish game. Whatever the scenario is will give you your objectives, which might be capture that staff car that's got that officer in it, or raid that building because it's got an officer or intelligence in it. So you've got to get some guys in there and get a prisoner and get him out. Or you've got to lay explosives and try and blow up the supply depots or the parked aircraft if you're doing that. So they lay out where guards are. Now there's this thing of movement and sight. You can move around because it's presumed that you are obviously doing your attack during the dead of night because you're not morons. So sighting is actually quite close until you do something, until you fire, until you trigger off something. Guard positions have observation areas around them. It is presumed, obviously, the long-range desert group guys are fairly stealthy, but vehicles are easy to see, so probably what you're doing at this stage is you're going to leave some guys on the vehicles as a fire base, perhaps, and you're going to send some guys in to do the job. There are quite relatively simple rules for this. It runs off D10s, largely. You have numbers that you're rolling on a D10, rolling high in order to hit something. But it's not just about hitting and destroying things. If you open fire on something, as fire comes down on a target, you can also suppress it, which drives it to ground. It stops it doing anything back. It stops it firing, it stops it moving. Long-range desert group units are not subject to that rule. They're presumed to be, sterling individuals. Essentially, they're very, very elite. The things they're facing, they can be elite, average, or green. And will fight and save against these different things accordingly. But in effect, a weapon is going to be firing on D10s to hit. If it is a armoured target, you are going to roll to penetrate its armour depending on how tough that is, and you're going to roll for effect. Because this is a skirmish game and because vehicles are important, when you hit vehicles and so on, they don't magically blow up. You do things. You shoot their tyres up, you damage their engines, you cause fires, you damage crew. Rapid fire weapons get to roll like a bunch of dice. So yeah, you're pipping down quite a bunch of fire here, but in the more stealthy end of it, you can move units, and there are observation areas around guards. It is a splendid night, Fritz. I wonder what they're doing at home. Shh, shh, shh. Don't talk like that. Anytime you talk like that, England and commanders jump out of the shadows. We've all seen that scenario played out 100 times, so you get to do it. So you can do close combat assaults and so on. If someone is unaware of you, obviously it's very easy to dagger in the back and kill people, etc. Cutting wire and so forth. But there are obviously moving patrols. There is a chance in some areas that just, you roll to see if a moving patrol has come into the area, in which case, shite. We've got a couple of guys who are walking across you didn't see before. So yeah, again, it keeps you guessing. Your ideal, obviously, is to somehow cut the wire when no one's there. Don't blow yourself up in the minefield. Sneak your guys with the explosives in, avoiding the guard areas. Plant your explosives and try and get the smeg out without triggering anything off. So, relatively simple. But here's where kind of the other 90% of the game comes. The trip home. So using these cool little cards, what you do is you generate the trip home. You've got to get back. Each of these cards is used to generate the events that happens in the one day afterwards. So you play your little game, and you've obviously got to get your saboteurs or your seized officer or information assets or whatever, and get them back onto the trucks and get out of there, while some local vehicles and so on are going to go pedal to the metal and try and get to you and blow you guys up and get off there. You can, over the course of days, do stuff. You can attempt to repair damaged vehicles and so on. So it's not like absolutely permanent, but as you do that, you start running out of spares and assets. But you start drawing cards and you start telling the tale of your way back. So you draw cards and it'll tell you, you go on. They will generate troubles for you, like you might be bogged down and so on. You have to have a set number of guys to work to get a vehicle free, otherwise you're going to have to abandon the vehicle. You can strip gear off vehicles, but if you've taken casualties, you are going to possibly have to start abandoning vehicles. But it also brings in things like German observer planes are looking for you. You have to roll to see if you evade them. Arabs, do you talk to them, yes or no? They can give you water, they can offer you things, but they might leak intelligence to the enemy, so it might be better to avoid them. On the other hand, if you've started running out of assets, maybe it's time to beg the locals for water. But there are guys after you. You did a raid, they're sending guys after you. So what you're looking for is a clear run home, and that's not what you're going to get because this is a war game. You can be strafed, in which case there's like little air defense sub games and so forth, where you try and beat the guys off, shoot them down, try not to get hurt too much. But eventually these cards are going to generate a scenario where suddenly a pursuit has appeared behind you, at that moment when you've got the broken down vehicle and you've all stopped there to repair it, etc. And now you've got an actual game on. And there's a deployment system for doing that game. So you might find yourself, here is a German motorcycle reconnaissance unit has come after you. Here is a German armoured car unit has come after you. Here is a few truckloads of German infantry. But these guys have got mortars. They've got, they can have artillery. They can have air support, and you are trying to beat these guys off and get home. So it generates a series of random events which wear your units down and cause you troubles, which eventually leads to these cards randomly generating a tabletop wargame scenario for yourself. It does require a bit of sort of interpretation. You can set up the terrain and so on around you in ways that you see fit. That will be fun, but in general it will say, given your patrol, you're being attacked by a German patrol. Here's what patrol forces are. You can meddle it around a bit, it's like you can choose 2 from box A, 3 from box B, but it gives you those fights. This goes on until you finally get home. You've got a set number of days to survive until you can get home. There are also kind of side missions that can come in as you are heading home. Base contacts you and we need you to head off to this area and do this and that. So again, there are specific missions that you can be suddenly sent on. In some cases, if you've taken too many casualties, you do have the right to refuse those missions. But in the end, home you go. Since this can be done as a little campaign thing, your guys can obviously, increase in experience and so forth. And you rebuild the unit to do further battles. So look, this is an interesting little game. What you've got here is a set of combat rules which they're skirmish, so they go right down to guys throwing individual grenades, setting off individual booby traps, stabbing people from behind. They've got a cute little stealth system in there because you will be doing night attacks and so on. But this also has to run up to trucks with twin Vickers guns and a 20mm cannon on them, zooming past, brassing up a whole line of German barracks blocks to keep those guys suppressed while your other trucks race in to pick you guys up off the airfield and run like hell. Or a German patrol has closed in on you. They've set up their mortars. They're thundering mortar fire down on you while they're while the armoured cars are coming in trying to cut you off. So, an interesting idea to do those long raids, not just as a commando raid game, but as a commando raid game that then leads into this random generator for what happens on your trip home, which leads to some more skirmish games to overall complete the mission. A really cute idea. So figure-wise, it's not expensive. Look, back in the day, I would have smegging loved this, because think of it, a couple of Matchbox or Airfix boxes of 1/72 Deutsche Afrika Korps or Italians and some kind of random British and British Commando-y kind of boxes, and there's your miniatures. And buy a couple of Chevvy trucks and so forth, and bang some guns on them, and we're done. Terrain is obviously, it can be as elaborate or simple as you like, but this is a great way of getting some really cool fierce games from having skirmish level figures. Skirmish games are notably cheaper to play than things that require you to have 9,000 28mm miniatures perfectly painted on the field. So look, this is a good fun idea. It's kind of bright, it's kind of boppy. Look, this is a sort of, there is a breed of miniatures books which are done by British wargamers who have a good idea. I love these, frankly. These are where our hobby comes from. There's some cool artwork in here, by the way, which is obviously inspired by, we used to call them training pams when I was in the army. There was a particular type of British comic. They're about that big and that high. There was Battle and there was Commando and so on. There was always fantastic stories of, bashing the Bosch and hammering the Hun in World War II. So, yes, they've taken their key from that, as these stalwart Commonwealth lads are going to, knock the Hun for sex. It's a very simple way of making sort of a game that's a mini campaign. There's some adverts in the back, by the way, for some pre-done, for some cool miniatures and so on for this. You've got your little vehicle rosters in the back, because each vehicle is like how many guys on it, any special notes, which is damage you might have taken or whatever, how much ammo you've got, because you expend ammo as you do things. So it's not a complex game. The rules they're a little bit impenetrable, because it's full of a lot of tight writing with some black and white yellows. It's by wargamers for wargamers. This is not a beginner's book. It presumes that you're from wargaming miniatures culture, that you play these games, that you know what it's all about, and that you're kind of ready to have a read through these and kind of interpret them with that eye. So this is not a beginner's game. It presumes that you're part of a wargames community, and that's why you found this thing. As a solo game, I like it. I like it a lot. Because it's unusual in that it's not just making you a tabletop game scenario, it's making you a mini campaign that you play, which will generate its own combats and its own kind of that wearing down. So we went in there and we grabbed the German general. Fantastic. Now get him home without having him strafed, without having a German mortar bomb landing on it. You've always got to keep one guy next to him to make sure that he doesn't go away, and that it better not be the guy driving the car, because otherwise he's just going to jump off the back and run off. Meanwhile, Jeep number 2 has had to be abandoned because you're just running out of guys, and ammunition for the Bofors gun has gone. So it's that kind of interesting decay of assets as you're then hit with skirmish game scenarios on the way home. Great idea. Again, if you're a kind of a Western deserty fan, it's not a bad idea at all. It can obviously be played not just as solo, but as with an opponent playing the Axis, or with multiple people playing the desert group. Guys can be playing individual trucks or pairs of trucks or different groups, and I can see that you could adapt this into much wider ideas. And you can certainly make your own, and it's effectively make your own card deck and encounter charts if you wanted to make your own campaigns with flavour. If you wanted to turn this into something else, like if you want to do a Merrill's Marauders, working your way through the jungle kind of thing, this is what I would use for inspiration on that one. Anyway, I do love miniatures because I love the fact that it combines like a passion for history and so on with a passion for making cool stuff, for making little models of trucks and painting guys and making sandy hills and painting that palm tree. I love to see that after all these years that hobby's still going strong. So love it, play it, look at people's rules. Even if you're never going to play them, it's worth seeing what your fellow gamers, what's in their hearts, what they're cooking up. Everyone has those good ideas that are worth listening to, and in miniatures you can just plunge in and play a game. When someone gets an enthusiasm, hell yeah, I'll play that game with you. Let's have some fun. Anyway, Mr. Snooze and I are weathering the winter, and we will see you hopefully around a games table someday. Look after yourselves, everyone, and much love to you all. Okay, bye. He's turning it off.